TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcast to you from Jerusalem. The remains of 2 Israeli hostages were returned to Israel over the weekend, while 4 bodies of hostages remain in Hamas captivity to date. The S&P Global Ratings revises its outlook on Israel's economy from negative to stable. The Islamic Republic of Iran blames Europe and the United States for Tehran's own defiance of international nuclear safeguards. The remains of 2 Israeli hostages were returned from Hamas captivity over the weekend, to include 61-year-old Lior Rudayov, who was murdered on October 7th of 2023, and whose body was held by the Palestinian terror group captive for 764 days, as well as the remains of Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, who was killed on August 1st of 2014 during Operation Protective Edge, and whose remains were held captive for a total of 4,118 days, which amounts to over 11 years. The remains of the late Lior Rudayov were returned to Israel on Saturday.
On Saturday, Command Sergeant Major Reserves Lior Rudayov, he was born in Argentina. He immigrated to Israel when he was 7 years old. He lived on kibbutz near Yitzhak and was the deputy security coordinator and member of the rapid response team right there on October 7th. Lior fought heroically alongside his team that horrific morning of October 7th. He fought off many terrorists outside of the gates of the community. He was ultimately killed in battle, with his body taken hostage into Gaza by terrorists from Islamic Jihad. He was 61 years old at the time he was murdered, and he leaves behind his wife, his 4 children, 3 grandchildren, his father, and his 2 siblings. His remains came home over the weekend.
The next day, on Sunday, the remains of Lieutenant Hadar Goldin, who fell in battle when Islamist Hamas terror operatives exploited a brief cessation of hostilities during the course of the 2014 Operation Protective Edge for the purpose of kidnapping IDF soldiers, was finally returned to Israel.
Lieutenant Hadar Goldin fell in a heroic battle in Operation Protective Edge 11 years ago. His body was taken hostage by Hamas, which refused to return him all this time. Throughout this period, Israeli governments made great efforts to bring him back. Naturally, this has been amidst the great agony of his family, which will now be able to lay him to rest in Israel.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, during his weekly cabinet meeting, continued by stressing Jerusalem's unwavering resolve to return all of Israel's fallen soldiers, whose remains remain captive beyond the boundaries of the State of Israel.
We said at the start of the war that we would bring back all of the hostages, without exception. 255 were taken hostage, including 4 who were taken hostage previously. We have returned 250 so far. We will bring them all back. We also have a legacy from the founding of the state, from the War of Independence to the War of Redemption, to return our soldiers who fell in battle, and we are doing that. Sometimes it takes a long time, like over 40 years in the Battle of Sultan Yaqub. We have returned 2 of the fallen soldiers from there so far, and there is still 1 more soldier. This is a great obligation of ours, both to our soldiers and to our security personnel. We are working on returning Eli Cohen for burial in Israel. We do not relent on this. Therefore, this is a sacred value. It expresses the mutual responsibility we have to the citizens of Israel, and first and foremost to the soldiers and fighters of Israel.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced that Israel's credit rating was once again raised by the S&P Global Ratings, which revised its outlook for Israel from negative to stable.
Israel's credit rating was raised today by the S&P agency, and there are 2 reasons for this. 1, it must be understood that Israel's geopolitical standing has strengthened significantly. It has strengthened significantly compared to what it was before October 7th. Israel is perceived as stronger, and the greatest geopolitical and security threat to it, Iran, has definitely been reduced, in the language of the professionals. Iran suffered a great blow, Israel's power increased, Iran's power decreased, and the existential threat that it posed to us and the entire region, that threat has been greatly pushed back. This is one basis for what is currently happening, although in my opinion, the rating agencies have not yet fully internalized the major change that has occurred here.
It is worth noting that while the revision granted to Israel marked a stable outlook, the rating itself remains unchanged from grade A. Nevertheless, S&P now sees Israel's economy growing by 5% in 2026, with fewer reserve soldiers being called up, which will ease the tight labor market. The fiscal forecast is also slightly improved, but the debt-to-GDP ratio is expected to reach 68% by 2028, which compares with a forecast of 55% before the multi-front war. Meanwhile, on Israel's northern front, vis-a-vis Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Israel Air Force struck the Iranian proxy's infrastructure and 3 terror operatives in the Bekaa Valley, among others, which are all situated in the south of the country, locations in which Hezbollah terror activities were identified in recent months. Moreover, in Nabatiyeh, several terrorist infrastructure sites were struck, to include infrastructure housing strategic weapons production facilities and storage sites, which contravene with the ceasefire agreement that was reached on November 27th of 2024.
Israel continues to insist on the full enforcement of the ceasefire agreement with Lebanon. Israel is taking steps to ensure our security. We will not allow Hezbollah, the terrorist organization, to recover, rebuild its strength and threaten Israel from anywhere in Lebanon. Hezbollah's terrorist activities constitute a violation of the understandings between Israel and Lebanon, and the IDF will continue to operate to remove any threats to the citizens of Israel and our soldiers.
It is important to know that there has been an evident uptick in Israeli enforcement strikes against the Iranian proxy Hezbollah amid clear, concerted efforts by the Iranian terror group to rehabilitate its military infrastructure in Lebanon. Meanwhile, U.S. National Security Council Senior Director Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Undersecretary of the Treasury for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence John Hurley met with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun at the presidential palace in Beirut yesterday, during the course of which the senior American officials discussed ways in which they could partner together with the Lebanese government to stop the flow of money from Iran to Hezbollah and create a safer and more prosperous Lebanon. It is interesting to note that while the Ayatollah regime has sponsored its terror proxies throughout the Middle East for the openly declared intention of annihilating the State of Israel and pushed the United States out of the region, it continues to claim that it is peaceful in nature and that it is merely pushing back at Western demands that humiliate the Islamic Republic.
We don't want to fight. From day one I said we didn't want to fight. We want to live in this world in peace and security, but not be humiliated, and it is not acceptable that they impose upon us whatever they want and we just serve them. Just as you can, the people of Iran can, and we can build a country that is prosperous, proud, and powerful.
In addition to the sheer lies by the president of the Islamic Republic's government, Tehran is pushing back at efforts by the International Atomic Energy Agency to scrutinize the Islamic Republic's nuclear program, deliberately limiting the agency's access.
The agency must understand that these conditions are not ordinary. Before the military aggression of the Zionist regime and the United States, we cooperated with the IAEA in a recognized manner, and afterwards, under the Cairo Agreement framework, we reached mutual understanding for cooperation in the new conditions. Those who should be held accountable are the Europeans, who, by trying to exploit the JCPOA mechanism and the UN Security Council resolutions that had been annulled, disrupted the entire process that we had initiated with the IAEA.
While the Ayatollah regime continues to defiantly pursue ballistic missiles capable of carrying nuclear payloads, alongside its refusal to abandon a military nuclear program, Tehran is unabashedly calling on the West at large, and the United States in particular, to lift all crippling sanctions imposed on its economy. While Tehran is consistently facing growing economic pressure, it continues to divert much of its funds to advance its military and terror proxies throughout the Middle East at the expense of its own citizens. Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would like to thank you if you're a supporter of TV7 Israel, since your donation is essentially helping us produce our daily updates from here in Jerusalem. If you haven't yet supported TV7 Israel, which is exclusively donation-based, please consider doing so. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, as ever, pray for our persecuted brothers and sisters worldwide, alongside prayers for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. Jonathan Essen wishing you a Shavua Mevorach, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.